With us now, Professor Philippe Sands, who is a QC and expert on war crimes and international law. And joining us from Denver, Colorado, Ambassador Christopher Hill. He was America's chief negotiator with North Korea over its nuclear weapons program. Ambassador Christopher Hill, this is very, very outspoken language by the United Nations panel, and there's no doubt they have justification for it. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, knowing the countries you do, what effect actually anything like this has?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think it'll have a lot of effect in the near term, although I think it is very important to get this on the record, get this systematically on the record for future reference. Clearly, the negotiations with North Korea have not gone very far. We tried very hard on the nuclear side, but even had we made progress on the nuclear side, we would have then turned to some of these issues, and these issues are quite difficult. The North Koreans really feel they have some kind of exceptionalism in the world to do whatever they want to their people. So I think it was a great effort by Michael Kirby, and I think it's very important that this be on the record as it is now.
Well, I want to come back to the question of negotiations, but just quickly to turn to Philippe Sands. I mean, as the ambassador suggests, it won't have any immediate effect because presumably from an international law point of view, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be prosecuted.
I mean, it's not going to have any immediate effect. It'll have a slow burn effect. What is staggering about the report, I spent part of the afternoon reading the detail. It's the individual anecdotes, it's the consistency, it's the sheer numbers. It's beyond belief. I mean, one tale of a woman who had the misfortune of giving birth to a live baby, forced to drown her own baby immediately upon birth with the assistance of others, and it's happening systematically. So as the ambassador said, it's the fact that it's done to such detail by a team led by Michael Kirby, who is not just anybody. This is a very distinguished independent jurist. He had two other terrific colleagues on the group, and I think this makes it very difficult for those countries who would prefer to turn a blind eye, and one's obviously thinking of China, to continue to say this is acceptable behaviour.
That's the problem, is it not? All along, Ambassador Hill, we are left with a situation in which the great protector, although they aren't much interested, one suspects, in the detail, is China. And until China breaks ranks with North Korea, even a report like this is not going to have much impact.
Well, I think it's important to get the Chinese on board with this, obviously, but as your question implies, it is very difficult to get the Chinese on board. As you note from the report, the Chinese came in for some well-deserved criticism because they have had the tendency to take some of these North Korean refugees, call them economic refugees, and refoul them, to use the refugee term, that is to send them back to North Korea to a very uncertain future. So I think the Chinese are going to have some explaining to do on their own with regard to this report. I would like to say, however, that Chinese attitudes to North Korea are beginning to evolve. China is no longer the country that is sort of always defending them. In fact, the Chinese have never invited Kim Jong-un to China because of the behavior of this North Korean regime. So the Chinese are beginning to evolve, but I think it's going to take some time.
Now, if anybody ever tried opening it with North Korea and making a relationship, you did. But as you've implied from your first answer to us tonight, in the end, you've basically given up hope. And I'm wondering, what actually can the West do? Clearly, it can't actually arrest and prosecute these guys, but what can we do to either bring Korea into the family of nations or so ostracize it that it falls to pieces?
Well, first of all, I think the more contact North Korea has with the world, the better. I think they live in this kind of splendid isolation where they think that everything that goes on in the world doesn't apply to them. So I think the more contact they have, the better. Secondly, I'd like to make the point that as difficult as it is to try to make progress on nuclear weapons, it's important that we try to do so. It's important that we keep this six-party process together, work with the Chinese, because nuclear weapons are are rather dangerous things, especially in the hands of North Korean leaders. Now, does this suggest, however, that we should turn a blind eye to the human rights issue? No, it does not. But I must say, when you're the actual nuclear negotiator, you don't often talk about this. It's other people who do need to talk about this. So I think there can be some effort to continue to work on the nuclear issue while other people, whether human rights envoys or other people not directly involved with the nuclear issue, can continue to speak clearly about it. And I think it does need to be spoken about. And I think Judge Kirby has done a really excellent job of raising this.
Philippe Sands, now in the improbable event that Kim Jong-un goes somewhere where somebody could arrest him, the fact is it's still a very complicated business because you've got to be a signatory to the International Criminal Court, and that is the court which Judge Kirby has said must prosecute these people.
I think what Michael Kirby wants, the International Criminal Court presently can't exercise jurisdiction. North Korea is not a party. South Korea is actually, and has the president of the court. But what can happen is it can go to the Security Council, and I think it should go to the Security Council. The British, the Americans, the French, and the other non-P5 should join together and force it to a vote and see who actually is willing to say, no, this should not go beyond. The Chinese, it's not good enough for them to abstain. If they want to stop it going to the International Criminal Court, they have to vote against.
Well, let me pause you there, because that's a great point. Ambassador, let me just ask you in a word, do you think that'd be a good idea?
You know, I don't think we're anywhere near making progress on the nuclear or anything else. And frankly, I think it's time that China understood that some of the friends it had when it's growing up are not friends it should have for the future. So I'd like to kind of put the Chinese on the spot. I would.
Ambassador Hill and Philippe Sands, we've come up with an idea. Let's see if anyone does it.